Hey guys, I'm making this video today in case anybody's interested in watching what a custom Unraid server looks like that I built myself, and I put all, I wouldn't say random parts into it, but I didn't order them all at once. And yeah, this is my server that I built. So I'll just take you on a quick tour through it. And after we'll get into some of the parts that I put in, and I'll show you the products that I use in my build. There's quite a few things that I had attempted to do in the beginning, and it wasn't until I got a further understanding of Unraid that I was able to accomplish certain installations and things that I wanted to do with VMs. So we'll go over some of that today. So starting out, I haven't updated yet. I'm still on 6.9.2. So I have 9 attached storage devices. There's 5 disks, 2 16 terabyte, an 18 terabyte, and 2 8 terabyte. Now the story with that is, I started out, I went to Best Buy, and the first 2 things that I ordered for this server were the 2 8 terabyte drives. And I was thinking, because I didn't buy an Unraid, wasn't thinking about Unraid in the beginning. I originally started out with one of those little Western Digital cloud storage devices, the compact ones that you could pick up off the shelf in the store. And it just didn't cut it with the capabilities. So I ended up being stuck with the drives. But the next ones that I ordered were 16 terabytes. And then the most recent one, 18 terabyte. Now the type of drives that I'm using, that I prefer, are the Exos X16 or X18, 16 or 18 terabyte from Amazon. And they're priced around, I think, $400 on sale. Upwards of, getting towards $450 if they're not on sale. Okay, so that's my dashboard. Now I have, if you haven't noticed, I have Nextcloud on an SSD. And the reason for that is because it writes to the log every so many minutes, and it wakes up the hard drives if you have it, storing the data on the hard drives. Now I worked up a script to transfer the fact that it writes to the hard drives, and it transfer it to app data. But I just prefer it this way because we have our phones backing up to Nextcloud, automatic backup, so I don't want the disk staying on continuously. So the way that I have it set up is that it can back up our phones, and it's just going to the solid state drive. So the other, these are called pools. The other pools that I have here is for Seedbox, and it's because I had Seedbox that I was renting for a while. I rented about 10 of them, and I'll tell you, they're not as fast as my server. With TELUS and a 1 gigabit connection, it's actually 1.5 gigabit now. The installer is going to be coming on tomorrow to upgrade the modem to the 1.5 gigabit modem. But I'm getting a faster download rate out of that than I was out of any Seedbox company that I rented. I asked for refunds from all of them. So just so you guys know, don't waste too much money on Seedboxes. I'll go over what I use to download my torrents later. So, and of course I have the Samsung flash drive. So I like to use, I bought a 64 gigabit, or 64 gigabyte, and the reason why I'm using a 64 gigabyte is because it was on sale. But you really only need like an 8 gigabyte, because as you can see, it only takes up about 1 gigabyte of data here, 1.12. So the first thing you do when you get into Unraid is obviously you set your flash drive for no access, because you don't want it accessible, because it's a security risk. And just in case you accidentally go on there and don't know what you're doing, you can do a lot of damage and your Unraid server won't boot. So anyways, we'll get into some of the shares. I have quite a few shares created. App data, Docker, domains. I have one for downloads, one for games, one for ISOs. My media server share. Nextcloud has its own share. The Nextcloud database has its own share. There's one for pictures, one for Posty, because I had a mail server running at one time. That's kind of in the pipeline. I have my router set to demilitarize the IP address, and if you go into your installation templates for, I'll show you that actually right now. And you're installing a program. I'll just fast forward here till it loads. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about here. I demilitarized one of the IP addresses on my router, and the way that you do that without opening up all the ports on your Unraid server is you set it to BRO or BR0 custom, and then you can just type in your whatever IP address you want here, and that becomes the IP address for the app. So it could be anything. And that's one useful thing to know if you want to set up your app and you need a different IP. At one time, the TDAR nodes, we had to create different IPs for them. But with the recent update on TDAR, it doesn't ask for an IP or a port number on the nodes. Back to shares here. So I have a share for transcode cache, and that's for TDAR. We'll get into what that does in a little bit. I have one for system, I have one for software because I run phone unlocking software, and I install it to my laptop. So it's installed on my laptop, but it's actually installed onto the server. So if I open these up, the location of the file is on Unraid. And the reason why I did that was because the antivirus was attacking the software. So if I keep it on network attached storage, that's one way to avoid virus scans. And it seems to allow the software to work quite a bit better. Moving on to the next thing. Here's my settings. So in here, of course, I have the NVIDIA driver. I'll click on that. It's just taking a little while to load here. Okay, so one of the things, if you have, I don't know if you have an AMD or an NVIDIA graphics card, but I'm only really familiar with the NVIDIA aspect of it. And I recently added a second graphics card to my Unraid server, which is completely possible. And it took a little bit of figuring out how to get it to work. But I think I was looking at it more complex than just bolting it in and turning it on. Because I did run into some grief where in the beginning it wasn't registering as being installed in the machine. But it turns out it was just a bad PCIe extender that I had ordered off Amazon. So if you're running a graphics card or a second graphics card in your Unraid server, I wouldn't recommend using one of those extension bands because it won't show up in the GUI. At least it didn't for me. So I've got a NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1050 Ti, and I just bought an NVIDIA GeForce RTX 3050. And the reason why I have those is I bought the 1050 Ti for encoding H.265 for my media server because I wanted to compress the size of the video files down, and it does compress them down quite a bit. So that's the reason why I bought the first one. The second one, I wanted something that would also compress video files so I could run dual video cards. And right now I have 2 video cards and I have 2 gaming laptops. And I use them both, well, all 4 of them for TDAR. So when I'm encoding video, yeah, there's 4 video cards working as hard as they can to get that done for me. It definitely speeds up the time that it takes to do it. Because running just your Unraid server with one graphics card, if you have like terabytes and terabytes of movies and TV series, it's going to take a long time to encode all your media. So having dual graphics is definitely a big asset if you're doing a lot of work on your server. And the version I'm using is, I don't use the latest one, I just use the production. Or no, wait, that is the latest one. I had it on the new featured branch before, but I switched to the latest one. Now if you're using or you're interested in unlocking your NVIDIA video card, Space Invader 1 had a script that he wrote, but it doesn't work anymore. And what it does is it unlocks the NVIDIA card, but you have to have it installed on a previous version of the NVIDIA driver for it to work. And it worked in the beginning when I used it, but once I upgraded to the next driver, I couldn't use the script anymore. And I even tried downgrading so that I could use it, and it didn't work again. So I don't know if it GitHub is not updated or if he maintains that script or not, but it doesn't work for me anymore. But it was good when it did. I had 16 windows open on Jellyfin, and I was transcoding, 16 movies at once with the 1050 Ti. So it gives you an idea what kind of capabilities a 1050 Ti can have. If you're looking for a graphics card for your server, I looked at what did I need it for. And if you're just transcoding, because the graphics cards can only transcode 3 streams. It doesn't matter if it's a $400 graphics card or a $2,000 graphics card. Unless you have a Quattro, it's still only going to transcode 3 movies at once. But transcoding isn't necessary, even with H.265. And I'll get into showing you that as we get further into the video. So some of the plugins that I have, I'm just going to fast forward here while it loads the plugins. Still going. It does take quite a while for plugins to load. It always has. I'm not sure if it's because I have a lot of plugins or what the reason is, but I'm okay with it. It's not that big of a deal. I'm not sure if other people's Unraid servers take a long time to load, but mine does. Okay, now that my plugins have loaded, the first plugin that obviously I installed when I first got Unraid, which was about 7 months ago, was the Community Applications plugin, and you can find that on the Unraid website. The second one I installed was the NVIDIA driver, so that I could use my graphics card. And you can find those in the App Store, just up here. Well, Community Applications, like I mentioned, it is on the Unraid website, so you won't have access to the App Store until you install Community Applications. So to do that, you just click Install Plugin, and you copy and paste the address in and press Install. Just like this, the URL. So unassigned devices pre-clear. I haven't used it as much as maybe some people have. This plugin is a utility to exercise and clear disks prior to adding them to the Unraid array. Well, I've never cleared any of my disks before adding them to the array, and I've never had any issues with them. But it's recommended to have it, so I have it. Now, turbo write mode, I installed that, and to tell you the truth, I haven't noticed any real increase in write speed with it. But one of the reasons why that is because I have cache drives. And I started out with 5 terabytes of cache drives. I just went nuts. I wanted as much cache as I could get. I wasn't even using it all. And when I installed the second graphics card, I had to remove some of that cache because they were in PCIe cards in the motherboard, so they took up too much room. So C8 backup and restore app data, I've never used that either. One of the reasons why I don't use the backup stuff is because my hardware is all brand new, so I'm not worried about it crashing. And if it does, I can take measures to get the data back that I've picked up along the way. Core frequency is kind of neat. You copy in core frequency -CLI, and you put it into the terminal. The terminal is up here. This little greater than symbol. And just press enter. And that shows your CPU frequency and the temperatures of your CPU. Now my temperatures are around 35, 34 degrees on the RYZEN 7. And they were actually much higher. They were around 50 degrees when I had different settings. And we'll go over some of those settings a little bit later in the video. That affected the temperature. I guess I'll just show you guys right now what it was. What I think it was that raised the temperature anyways. Settings. GPU statistics. So that's another good plugin to use. It's one that I really like. And it allows you to select your graphics card brand and the GPU, whichever one that you want to display on your Unraid GUI. So I have my 1050 Ti displaying, not the 3050, because I'm using the 3050 for a VM. So I didn't want my GUI to look empty when I was running the VM and have nothing in the on the board here. So the 1050 Ti still shows up. So my internet speed, my Ethernet adapter, one of the things that I really like about Unraid is that it works with the built-in Ethernet adapter. And when I first built the server, and it was brand new, I installed FreeNAS on it. And that one I had to use an add-on card for the Ethernet adapter, or it wouldn't work. And as far as I know, all of the other server softwares besides Unraid require a dedicated Ethernet card. Otherwise, it won't pick up the network and you won't be able to install it. So it kind of made me happy that it works with Unraid, because I have a built-in 2.5 gigabit or 2500 megabytes a second Ethernet card on my motherboard. It's the B550F ASUS ROG STRIX. I'll go over some of the specs on here. So I call mine Ultra Performance Server. It has ASUS ROG STRIX B550F motherboard, the RYZEN 7 5800X 3.8 gigahertz 5000 series CPU, and that'll run you around $500 Canadian. And recently I just upgraded the RAM, and this is overclocked RAM. The RAM is rated to run overclocked, so 64 gigabyte XPG D10 DDR4 3200 megahertz. But when I install it, the BIOS shows up as 2666 RAM. So you have to use the DOC settings in the BIOS, and it will change it to 3200 megahertz. And I don't know if everybody's Unraid server will boot if you overclock the RAM, but mine did. So it's been fairly stable. There's one thing that did make it unstable, and I'll get into that once I finish describing the rest of the parts that are in here. I just put a brand new PSU in, the RM750X Corsair. Well, I really like Corsair. My CPU cooler is Corsair. And I'm going to show you all the parts boxes I used after. And I have the GeForce RTX 3050. That's brand new as well. I just put that in. And then my other graphics card is MSI NVIDIA 1050 Ti OC, the overclocked version. They're both very, very good video cards. I'm happy with them. If I had known then what I know now, though, I just would have bought the RTX 3050. Because I started out with the MSI one. The 1050 Ti, it's lacking in some areas. Like, it'll transcode 3 streams, but it's running at 100%. Whereas the RTX 3050, I mean, you're transcoding 1 stream, it's running at around 7% load on the GPU. So the temperature of the MSI card is definitely lower. It sits usually around 33 degrees. But the ASUS RTX 3050, it's a hotter running card. And the cooling fans on the MSI run all the time. But on the RTX 3050, they actually shut off. So 90% of the time they're not running, they're silent. Unless you're gaming with it. And even gaming, they don't turn on all the time. Well, there's a picture of it. You can put your own picture in the Unraid GUI. You do that. You have to actually stop the array to do that, and use, I think, click in here. This is where you add your label. So this is where I add the description. But yeah, you need to stop the array to change the photo. Okay, now get to the Docker area. This is exciting. It's got some notifications here. there's some new plugin updates, which I'll take care of later. Okay, so we've got top of the list here, NGINX page speed. And what that does is, whoa, that's a lot of notifications. Sometimes you have to refresh the page so they go away. I just don't want to deal with them right now. So NGINX page speed, that's basically like NGINX, which is a web server. So if you want to host a website, you want to run NGINX. There's other ones that you can run, but I'm most familiar with this one. This is the one that I use, and I haven't had any issues with it. And NGINX page speed uses, it's a little bit different. It's faster, it does load faster, but you have to build your web page in PHP. You can't use HTML, it won't work. But you can use PHP and HTML in NGINX in the regular version. Because right now I'm working on an online store to sell digital products. So I actually have my store. Oh, I don't want to update right now. My store running in a second version of NGINX. So you can install 2 different episodes of it. You can have it installed twice. Basically what I mean. So you install it once, and then when you get to the template to install the second one, what you do to install the second one is you go to add container and you select the template, and this is what you can use if you actually lose all your Docker containers. You can go back and restore your programs in your apps. Like say your Docker image got corrupted, you can go back and all the apps that you've ever installed are in here. So in order to install 2 instances of an app, let's go down to NGINX. See, I have NGINX and NGINX2. All that I did was, oops, I'm losing it today. Okay, where's NGINX2? Yeah, all that I did was I converted the name. I changed the name a little to NGINX2. So that's kind of something that needs to be done. And I changed the port number. So whenever you're running 2 instances of the same app, just give it a different port number and give it a different name. But also one important thing that you want to keep in mind is that I'll just turn on advanced view here. Is if there's an app data location in here, you want to also change the app data location so that it doesn't overwrite your first app that you have installed. So I have mine set to NGINX2. And here it is right here. I had to look for it a little bit. I haven't been in here in a while. So the app data location, it's critical that you change that to a different name with 2 instances of the same app. Because otherwise, obviously, if you just change the name up here and you don't change where you're installing it, then it'll over-install and overwrite your first version. And then your settings will be all mixed up. So, another thing too is, I got into the habit of putting the PUID as 99, PGID as 100, and the UMask is 022. And from what I understand, those affect the permissions of the files that the app handles. And I've made this the same across all of my applications because I want them all to match and I don't want any permission issues. So it seemed to work really good for me, and that's what I'd recommend for the numbers. I had some other numbers in here before, and I was having to go to Unraid and do new permissions continuously and reset the permissions for my media server. So all my apps are like this now. And to go to new permissions is just in tools right here, and you can select either your disks or your shares. And I'm not going to do it because my permissions are good, but if you say you needed to get into app data, you can just check it off and press start. And because app data, normally you can't change any of the settings in there and can't go into the files, but once you run this, you can. And doing it manually and going in through your Windows folders and shares to delete folders, I wouldn't recommend. And it took me about 6 months to figure out that there's something really good called Midnight Commander that you can use to take care of any files that you don't want in your app data. And it's good for a lot of other things too. It's really useful. Well, look, it's the GUI kind of malformed here. I'll zoom in on that. It does that sometimes. Just a little bug in Unraid. Some of the pages that you load, it'll distort the description up here where it says Unraid OS Pro. That's just the way it is. It doesn't hurt anything, and it goes back to the way that it was when you changed the page. Okay, so the second thing that I have here is Jellyfin, and that's one of my favorite all-time apps. And I know that some people, they like using Plex or MB, but I'm not a big fan of the ones that you have to sign into, because if your internet ever goes down, you can't sign into it really. I think Plex you can, but I just don't like relying on a service to sign into my own media server. Jellyfin is completely open source, and I was thrilled when I switched to it from Plex. I found Plex hard to navigate, and it just wasn't as user-friendly as Jellyfin. And I've got to know lots of details about the workings of Jellyfin, and I really grew an appreciation for it. So Jellyfin here will load the web UI. Now I have that ported so that it can be reached from external networks. I use my good password manager here. I also have that installed on Unraid. So I'm hosting a Bitwarden instance. So NVIDIA Jellyfin. So recently I put a folder in here for new releases. And it's just because I have my family watching and sometimes they don't know what to pick. So I put the new movies in here and then I switch them out every week. So Movie Central, I made these pictures. I did it in Paint on Windows. And in here I have 3,087 movies. Now you can change the amount of movies that it displays on one page, and I had it increased to 1,000, but for some reason it keeps changing back. But that's fine. So I've had this server running for 7 months, and I haven't shut it off except for upgrades. And I haven't even come close to watching all the movies that are on here. I think there was at some point I was going 22 hours a day and I was barely sleeping, and I was just downloading And like I mentioned earlier with regard to seed boxes and renting them, I never downloaded so many torrents as I did on my own Unraid server versus a seed box. There's always a hook or a catch with the seed box, and there's always something about it that makes it not as good and as fast as using my own server. And one of the things is you have to pay extra for SSD if you want an SSD seed box. And my server is an SSD seed box. It's built right in. And if you have a 1 gigabit connection, that's really all they offer from the seed box rentals. It's a 1 gigabit shared connection, actually. Now, there is the 10 gigabit network speed, and they will download faster, but they're not really 10 gigabit internet. They just say that they are. That's more like the network transfer speed. I actually benchmarked one. I installed Ubuntu on a seed box, and I benchmarked it at around 1500 megabytes a second, which was significantly faster than my internet. But tomorrow I'm getting my modem swapped out, so I'm going to have 1500 megabytes a second as well. So some of the downloads on torrents, if I go to like RARBG, that's rarbg.com, I'm getting up to 60 megabytes a second on each torrent if there's lots of seeds. So downloading torrents, the speed that you download them at isn't so much your internet speed, because I use OpenVPN for my internet connection with Qubit Torrent. That's the one that I like using. So OpenVPN I think is around 160 megabytes a second, maybe 200. So it's not utilizing the full potential of the connection. And I've tried using a VM, and because you have to use a VPN when you download torrents, because otherwise you get emails to your ISP saying that you've done copyright infringement. And I got a few of those in the beginning until I learned that you need to have a VPN installed and have it running. So the fastest way that I found to use torrents, and I'll show you that in the Docker, is Qubit Torrent VPN running OpenVPN. It's faster than my computer running Qubit Torrent with Nord links, because I use Nord for my VPN. In my opinion, and the truth is, it's the fastest VPN provider in the world. Like I'll show you a benchmark of NordVPN. But anyways, these are my movies. TV series. I have 359 TV series. And I have most of them, like most of the episodes are in here. The complete seasons. I tried to download them all. I use Sonar for that. Now Sonar is good. I'm not going to complain about it. I mean, I really enjoy using Sonar. It has some glitches, but it gets the job done. You know, it gets you what you want to get. You know, when you have it selected on that a certain series is not monitored, it still tends to download the same repetitively over and over again the seasons that you already have downloaded and that are already in the library. I'm not sure why it does that. It's just a bug. But despite that, you know, like you go through your downloads and you delete all the ones that you already have, and you just get used to doing that. And I haven't found any real way to fix it, because I've unmonitored the series and it still downloads it again over and over and over again. There is this one particular one, I can't recall the name of it right now, but it keeps downloading it, and it's really annoying. But Sonar is a good app, and good work to the people who produced it. So one of my favorite series that I'm watching right now. Actually, I like Arrow. And I'll just play it a little bit here for you. So right now we're playing it in the browser. So it's going to be transcoding. And the reason why it's transcoding is because all my video files are encoded in H.265 or HVEC. Because if we go back to the Unraid GUI here, you can see that the encoder is running. And you can see the Jellyfin logo here, showing that the Jellyfin is using the GPU. But it's only running at about 16% for the 1050 Ti. It's a really good video card. I couldn't be more happy with it. You know, the 3050 is definitely overkill. If you want to do VM gaming, then the 3050 is a solid choice. The 1050 Ti, I never could find a way to pass it through to the VM. But it wasn't until actually recently that I figured out that you had to modify the VBIOS and take the header off. And there's videos from Space Invader for that, where he shows you where to start and where to delete the header. I'm not going to provide any links to those videos. You can search for them on YouTube and they come up right away. So transcoding is good. I did have some issues with the one 1050 Ti video card, where it was choppy and it was pixelated when I was playing video files. And what I did to fix that was in my dashboard here for Jellyfin. Let me just look for it right here. Okay, like I was saying, in the dashboard, you go to playback. So if you're getting any pixelation in your playback while you're transcoding, and that's transcoding with the GPU. Transcoding with the CPU, well, that's just sucky, and I don't recommend it. But then I changed the one setting here to fast, the encoding percent, and that cut out that pixelation completely. So I had no more problems once I did that. Jellyfin by default had it set on medium, so I could actually just change it to medium and show you what happens if you play on medium. So we're on medium. I'll go down to save. It says the message here, enabling hardware acceleration may cause instability in some environments. Ensure that your operating system and video drivers are fully up to date. If you have difficulty playing video after enabling this, you will need to change the setting back to none. Okay, so now it's set on medium. So now I'll go back. I go back to Arrow and watch what happens when I play it. Maybe it's not going to do it.
Queen is alive. The Starling City resident was found by
action suit against a man who swindled hundreds of people out of their homes and life savings, then we're not fit to call it.
Oh, look at that. It's actually playing it good.
And if we go
But it doesn't play all of them good. And I'm going to go back and change the setting one more time and show you what happens. So this actually increases the quality. So I probably could have it set on medium, and that would be just fine. It increases the playback quality if you have it set to encode slower. As you can see, her picture is much clearer.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So back to dashboard, back to playback. And I'll switch to slow encoding.
I'm sorry, too. I hope that you've gotten hell a whole lot more in 5 years.
For some reason, it's playing perfectly.
How'd you think that was gonna go, Tommy?
Look at that, the quality's improved.
Not like that. Okay, so we took care of that. Good call. Now we can make.
Let's see what the transcoding rate is.
Sick of fish. I suggest we find some
Running at 60%. Let's try a couple other shows and see what happens with them. Ones that I know are converted to H.265. Maybe it came out with an update on Unraid with the NVIDIA driver, and that was just a glitch that I had before.
Jak moc chce ředitel tu válku financovat? Udělej to a budeš si připadat, jako by ti to tam patřilo. Una traición como esta que ha sido en mi casa. Nemůžeme jenom čekat, než nás zabije. Co máš v tom batohu? Nic.
Vidím, že to vážně nebyla jenom...
Oh, you know why it's not doing it? It's because I have the 3050 in Jellyfin. And that's why it's not doing it. I can turn the quality right up with Jellyfin now. I thought that I had the MSI programmed into Jellyfin, and the MSI was the one that was glitchy. So if you just keep that in mind, if you do buy a NVIDIA MSI GTX 1050 Ti, that you have to be particular how you set the encoder rate on Jellyfin, whereas it's not so picky with the 3050. I can actually change that and show you guys. What the hell with it? Let's do it. Okay, NVIDIA driver. I set out to show you guys, and I want you guys to see it. So you just copy the GPU number here and go to Jellyfin in your Docker containers, and I'm going to stop the container. And see here where it says NVIDIA Visible Devices. I'm just going to switch that with the MSI, just so you guys can have an idea of what I was talking about. Because I had the MSI on GPU statistics on the GUI, but it was I got them mixed up in Jellyfin. I had the brand new video card hooked up. That's why I could change the settings to pretty much whatever I wanted. Okay, we'll start that again. And I'll run the update. This one thing I like about Unraid is the frequency of the updates. I actually have my updates set to once a week, because I find that, you know, some of them are being updated daily, and that's really too much for me. I don't have time to go and update all my apps every single day, because look at all the apps that I have. If I had to count them all, I don't know, there's like 27 on here or something. But anyways, let's also go to the HTTPS version of Jellyfin instead of the internal IP address. So to do that, so it's accessible from anywhere. Now we'll do playback and see if it pixelates. that one. But you can tell that it's not quite loading. It's not loading very good for some of the videos now that I've changed the encoding speed to slow. Let's try and nip tuck. So yeah, it's not loading. So there you have it. You can see what an effect that encoding speed plays on transcoding videos. In fact, it's frozen now. There. So I'll go back to playback and change that back to, so that's on slow. Change it back to medium. Try that. There we go. There is the, damn it, there's the pixelation I was talking about. See, only the 1050 Ti does this. That's one reason why it's a good card, but it wouldn't be my first choice to buy it again. So yeah, any video that I play that's in H.264 or H.265 pixelates like crazy. So the way to stop that, because like I said, Jellyfin was on default, and under playback it was on default at medium encoding. Switch that back to fast. Now the problem's gone. But the quality is not as good on the MSI card as on the 3050 either. Because I'll go back and I'll switch the card and I'll show you the difference. I don't know if you can see it from your angle. Okay, so I'm back in settings, back at NVIDIA driver, and I'll copy the GPU number from my 3050. I'll go back to Docker containers. I'll stop the container. Click right here. Change the GPU UUID. Now we're at the 3050. Now we're rolling. Baller. I got in the habit of stopping my containers before I do any editing on them. Okay, now we're back at Jellyfin. And now let's go to dashboard. And playback, and we're going to switch to medium again. Even slow. Let's go a step further. Let's look at it on slow. Same video here. Let's see if it'll play. No, it doesn't like it. I'm not even sure why they have these settings in here, to tell you the truth. It should play on medium, but it won't play on medium on the 1050 Ti. Oh, it's pixelated as well. But the arrow wasn't pixelated, was it? See, some of them will do it and some of them won't. That's the point I'm trying to make. So, yeah, you might want to keep your settings for Jellyfin on fast. Hey, it works for me. And I just lost connection here. Oh, there we go, it's back. So back to dashboard, back to playback, and switch it back to fast. It seems to like the fast setting the best. I have throttle transcode set. For the Mux and Q size, I was having a bit of a playback issue, so I upped it from 2048 to 3048. And it plays better. For enabling hardware decoding, I have them all checked off. And for hardware acceleration, you put none. If you want to use your CPU for transcoding, you would select none. But if you want to use your NVIDIA, then you have to select it. Or AMD, if you have AMD or Intel. And now, as you can see, it will just play perfectly. Everything plays perfectly. Normally, I don't watch Jellyfin on HTTPS. It takes a little longer for the pages to load. And I'm using Cloudflare. They're the company that I highly recommend for domain service. But if you're running Jellyfin, you won't want to have the proxy enabled, the proxy protection, because if you run all of your movies and videos that you're playing through the proxy, I heard that they can ban your account, and it's in the contract actually as well, under fair usage, that it's only for HTML documents. So on Cloudflare,
Do it.
just log in here and I'll show you real quick.
Make yourself hard.
Can you give me a hand?
Christian, do it.
Gee.
So Jellyfin, the proxy's turned off. On, off. And you definitely want to have the proxy disabled for your media server if you're running it through a domain, because there's strict rules on that. And also for Nextcloud, it decreases the time it takes to upload if you have it just set on domain. So the proxy, don't enable it for Nextcloud. So I've got Bizarre for my subtitles. Bit. That one can be deleted. I've got Bitwarden. I've got Cloud. That's Nextcloud. I have two for Nextcloud. I have Jellyfin, Jellyfin View. I have one for the mail server, Radar, Sonar, Torrents. Pretty much everything I run through DNS. So right now it's playing 2 movies. So if you go back to the Unraid GUI, it's showing it's actually not transcoding any of them. But if you're transcoding, it'll show you the processes here, and you can see how many videos are being transcoded at once. And some of my movies and TV series aren't encoded in H.265, and I'm not sure why exactly. It's not TDAR's fault. It's just some strange reason why the composition of the file doesn't allow it to be converted, and it just goes to error. So I'm okay with it. I've saved a lot of space. I've probably saved... Oh, let me see. I had around 40 terabytes of movies and TV shows. So I've saved at least 12 terabytes using TDAR. But I also use Unmanic. So we'll just close off media server here in a second. This is when we were doing the basement. The one thing I like about Jellyfin is you can control your own media. So when the plumber came to do the basement, I made a video and I put it on Jellyfin for my family to watch. So something with the file, it's not playing in the web browser. So it's an MP4, but for some reason it's not compatible with the web browser. So that's one thing I like about the Jellyfin media player. Everything will be supported and compatible. See, now it's playing here, but it doesn't play in the web browser. Oh, it's playing now. It wasn't playing on HTTPS. Or did it just need time to load? Yeah, a little bit of a glitch there, see? It doesn't play there. So, I mean, you know, Unraid, I love Unraid, but there's some things about it, as you'll find as you use it, that there's like little bugs and things, and it's not Unraid's per se's fault. I mean, it's Jellyfin and some of the other software on here. Little annoying bugs like that. But, you know, you can play it in Jellyfin Media Player, which is usually what I use for almost everything. Our drain was plugged. And I have all of the James Bond series. I haven't watched any of them yet. There's just so much media on here. I can't even begin to go through it all, watch them all. Usually I'm using just a local connection for Jellyfin. But Jellyfin Media Player, it's on their website. If you want to avoid transcoding, it will play HVEC H.265 without transcoding. It will play pretty much any video file without transcoding, except with the exception of AV1. AV1 is something that there's no support yet for, and even the new TVs, if you want to buy a TV that supports AV1, it's going to be very expensive, and it's definitely not within my price range to go on one of those endeavors. See, my TV it's supported for H.265, so I'm not transcoding HVEC H.265 with my television, and I can show you guys with the camera what kind of TV that is a little bit later. Okay, enough of Jellyfin. Back to the server. So I have my VMs, and one of the challenges that I had was getting the GPU to work with a VM. So I only have 2 VMs. I'm nothing crazy, you know, like 10, 20 VMs installed. I have Ubuntu because I like to use Linux from time to time. It's a bit of a learning curve for me, and I enjoy doing things with that, installing the odd program here and there and learning how to use it. And I have Windows 11 VM, so I'm just going to start that VM. So right now the graphics card that's passed through to this VM is the 3050 Ti, or not Ti, just the 3050. Okay, loaded. So now this is the one thing, you know, I wish that it had come easier when I was learning about Unraid, and I couldn't find an answer anywhere. And it was just like, you know, the other day that I figured this out. And I've been using this for 7 months. But I hadn't spent a lot of time on VMs. I was more doing Jellyfin, downloading torrents, and specializing in other areas. So there's no VNC here to start your VM. So what do? How do you start it? Well, initially when you make the VM, I'll just stop it here. I have to force stop it. So when you make the VM here, you go to edit. You create your name. You assign CPUs. And I've been reading that the CPUs that Unraid likes to use are CPU 0 and 1. So I don't know how accurate that is, but since I heard that, I've been avoiding using CPU 0 and 1 for, or just CPU 0, I mean for my VMs. So what I'll do is I'll use the last portion of my CPUs for the VMs. I find that the VM runs better like that. Maybe it's just the Ryzen 7. I don't know if an Intel would be the same, but for me this is what works. And I don't assign the maximum amount of RAM. Like, this is my gaming VM, and I have 25 gigs of RAM assigned to it. And for my initial memory, it's set to 256 megabyte, because if it doesn't need the max memory, I don't want it to use that. For the machine type, I have it set to the default i440FX-5.1. And I've heard that for different situations you want to try the Q35 5.1, but this VM won't start with that. I mean, I think that's for Intel. Okay, the other thing you want to set to is you'll want to set it to CBIOS and enable Hyper-V. That's just by default enabled, and if you disable it, it'll just enable itself again. So USB controller, I have 3.0, but you can have 2.0, but I found the mouse is laggy and not as responsive with the USB 2.0, like when you move your mouse back and forth. So for my install ISO, I have a version of Windows 11 Pro, which is the same version I have on my computer. And it's the Windows 11, and I'll show you. Internet of Things. It's called IoT Enterprise. And I absolutely love this version of Windows 11. It's the best one I've ever used. Everything seems to just work well with it. It just works. I switched to this. I originally tried Windows 11 when they had the insider preview, and there was a ton of glitches and file transfer speeds were really suffering. So I switched back to Windows 10 Enterprise for the longest time. But then I was having some other things, you know, some bugs and glitches with Windows 10. There's just some little things that I thought they could have improved on. So I was like, it's just time to upgrade again. I'm going to try it. I'm going to find a better copy of Windows 11, and I'm going to try it out. And yeah, I switched all the computers in my house to this. So this is my gaming laptop, Ryzen 7 4800H with Radeon graphics, 32 gigs of 3200 megahertz RAM, and it has a 1660 Ti. But that's, anyways, this is the same Windows that I use for my VM. So it's not a special version of Windows or anything. But one thing that I have figured out is that, and this may come as a bit of a surprise to you, is that the drivers, because they're the Virtuo drivers, like when you're setting up your VM, download the latest version. But this installs pre-fabricated drivers for your VM, and you won't be able to install a graphics card driver for NVIDIA. Like if you go to the NVIDIA website, that graphics card driver would not install with my 3050. But you know what would? There's a way to bypass that, and it's called Driver Booster. And I've got Driver Booster Pro, and this will download drivers for any VM and update them to the latest drivers. So if you have a VM that you're gaming on and it's glitchy or it's not quite working properly, you got nothing to lose by trying out Driver Booster. Just run it, update all the drivers, and it just works. It's a miracle. It's like God's gift. Anyways, that's how I fixed my VM, because I was having issues with it, with gaming. I always wanted to set up a gaming VM, and you know, I kept trying and trying, and the documentation out there, and you know, there's the forums and stuff, but I didn't really feel like I had so many questions and I couldn't get them answered in the forums. So there was this guide that I used to set up a VM, and I'll see if I can find it. Actually, it's probably in my history. I bookmarked it. Yeah, there's a guide for setting up VMs that I'll show you guys the website after I do this template. So vdisk image, I just use manual. Selected domains, I have a Windows 10 folder in there. I have a second virtual disk, which I just installed today. This is new to me. And what I was trying to do was pass through an NVMe drive to my VM. And there was the descriptions on YouTube and all those complicated videos where everyone seems to be doing it their own way. Well, this is my way of doing it, and this works. And it works really, really well. Just create a second vdisk and set the size to whatever the size of your NVMe is. In my case, I set mine to 1000.2 gigabytes because I wanted it to be 1000 gigabytes when it hit the VM. So that's why I use 1000.2. And yeah, it works fantastic. You know what? It's passing through an NVMe. And there might be ways to get performance of it, changing the syslog and other configuration settings of Unraid. But the last time I tried to mess with that stuff, Unraid wouldn't boot. And I tend not to mess with things that I don't understand. And some of the videos that you see on YouTube, you know, they're fine and dandy. These people, they can do these things. But if you tried to do it on your system, because of your hardware and your version of Unraid and any other combination of variables, it might not work. But this works. This will work for everybody. So my graphics card, I have it set as my primary graphics card. So you can set VNC, and for a while there, I was trying to use VNC and a graphics card. And if you're gaming, if you use VNC and a graphics card, Windows won't use your dedicated graphics card for the games. You have to cut VNC out of there, cut it out. And I have my VBIOS. And I did use Space Invader 1's video for that, on how to create VBIOS, because he shows you exactly where to separate it and which word to search for. You can just do a find and search, and you go down in the hex editor and you find that exact location and separate the VBIOS. I had to scroll a page for quite a while upward to select all of the areas that I needed to delete. So yeah, you just delete it. Delete the header and then save your VBIOS as whatever name you want. Put it in a folder that you can find and pop it in here. And I'm going to show you some of the gaming performance this baby has. So don't try to pass through an NVMe here. Well, I mean, you can if you want to, but for me, it doesn't work. I can't pass through any USBs right here. Even though I've plugged them into a USB controller that is separate from my Unraid flash drive, I found that there's been issues with my hardware trying to pass through anything. So that's one of the reasons why I just use the second V disk for my gaming hard drive. So that's where I install my games. So I'm just going to press cancel here because I never made any changes. Start the VM. I gotta have a puff on my vape. This is getting to be a long video. An hour and 18 minutes. I didn't expect to have this much to talk about. So the VM started. Let's have a look and see what it does for gaming. Okay, so the $1,000,000 question. What do you use for a remote desktop to connect to your VM? Well, initially when you set up your VM, you set it up with VNC. So you're in here. Instead of your graphics card, your setup has to be VNC. And while you're in VNC, you go down here to Remote Desktop Settings. And you enable Remote Desktop, which is what I've done on the VM. See that right there? You enable that. And select your users who can use it. Add your users. And you can pick any username, just pick the username that whatever you signed in for Windows. Done. That's explained. Now that was a mystery to me because I tried No Machine, and No Machine, the mouse was like finicky and it was laggy, and the sound and the picture were all choppy on my games, and I couldn't figure out why my VM wasn't working, and it was No Machine. So if you want to use a VM and do gaming, Windows Remote is what? Remote Desktop. That's the way to go. Okay, so Remote Desktop here. I have it already programmed in. I'll just press connect. I didn't give the VM enough time to set up. It has to sit for a few minutes before you can start the remote connection. So as you can see here, it's not working. So I'm going to fix that. I'm going to stop the VM. And restart the VM again. I think maybe it's because I had my VPN on. I'll just fast forward to the part here where I get this working. Okay, here we go. We're in the VM. Hey, the remote desktop doesn't cost anything. So, what happens is the VM just needs time to start up. It has to log into Windows and it has to sit there for a few minutes. And then it'll work. So just keep that in mind. Don't go back in and be in too big of a rush to change the settings. Just give it some time and it'll load. If you're using it frequently throughout the day, it'll load faster. So I've got Jellyfin on here as well. And you can watch Jellyfin from a VM. No problem.
Get it out of here, it's gonna be him! So sorry, I thought I had more time! I'm not the man you think.
So these are some of the capabilities of a VM. You know, you can do all kinds of things with it. You can have your computer completely all set up just the way you like it on a VM. And then you can go to work and you can use a regular laptop and you can play games on it, even if it doesn't have a dedicated video card. So one of the things that I think is cool is I feel the exhaust fans on my laptop while I'm VM game, and they're cold. Like my laptop's ice cold because it's not using the graphics card in my gaming laptop while I'm VMing. Okay, let's pick a game to start up. How about God of War? I actually just got this set up today. See? Look, no glitches. This particular game, you don't play too much with the mouse. You use the arrow keys, W, A, S, and D, and these arrow keys over here to control everything. Now the mouse you only use to swing your axe. Shoot the arrow! Shoot the arrow! Come on, die, you bastard! That's one thing that I'm having trouble getting past that guy. Gaming on a VM. Woo! No! Don't leave me alone! See how responsive everything is. It's so responsive for a VM. And the only difference is that, well, the two things that made a big difference were driver booster, and it's like God's gift to VMs, and using Windows Remote Desktop instead of No Machine. Because No Machine is not designed for gaming. And I don't know, I haven't tried Cyberpunk since I got it set up. You hear the fans whirring up on the Unraid server.
Good morning, Night City! Yesterday's body count lottery
Oh, yeah.
and sturdy 30. 10 out of Haywood. Thanks to unabated gang wars.
Now look at the mouse. A little bit of lag, but you know what? That's not bad. That's not much at all. It's pretty responsive.
Then stop looking for it and hit the road, quick.
Hit the road, bucko. I need to get my Xbox controller hooked up to this. Driving with the arrow keys is difficult. I'm not a very good driver on here. So
Someone get me out of here!
You find that some of the games may not play properly if you don't install them on the VM. What happened was I installed one of the games on Windows machine, and then on a Windows machine, and then the mouse doesn't move in different areas here. So that's one of the things I need to redo, is redo the installation on this game. So yeah, the mouse, I have limited range of motion, and I firmly believe that's because I didn't install the game on the VM. So it's not the VM's fault or the game's fault. It's just something to consider, that, you know, like if you have them installed on an external hard drive and then you transfer the games, there's going to be some glitches. And also you want to make sure that your games are going to save, so the best way is just install them on the VM. And what I do on mine is I install them on, like I mentioned earlier, I have a hard drive. That I use for such things. I have my VM drive. This is where I transfer all the stuff into, it's on the network, into the VM, like my installation of the games, all my files. And then in File Manager here, under this PC, I have the SSD, and that's the NVMe that I pass through, the 1 terabyte. That's where I'm installing all my games to. And you can see the Virtuo, the driver is here. When you first get into your VM and your Ethernet's not working, all you have to do is double click this and double click on this Virtuo Win GT X64 and just install this, and then everything will work except your games, because you have to use Driver Booster. And there's a little bit of a glitch here because I had Driver Booster and that was just installed today. And see how the icon is white and I can't load Driver Booster. Now if we just go into this PC, into the C drive, into Program Files, let's see if I can find Driver Booster and put a new icon on the desktop. Driver Booster. Create a shortcut. There, I created a shortcut and bam, just like magic. Now it appeared back on the desktop. But it's not loading correctly. Well, it worked once. That's what matters. I'm just going to reinstall Driver Booster. Going through some of my files for until I find driver booster here. Driver booster. There it is. I'll go back to the VM drive. Drop in driver booster. I don't have WinRAR installed on my VM, so I'm unzipping it here in Windows. Okay, so now I have my version DLL. And I will click on close this. Now, I don't recommend you guys do this. But I'm doing it there, Driver Booster Pro. Okay, good to go. Yeah, if you do a scan on a VM, you're good to go. It'll do all the drivers on here. And especially because the VM doesn't take the drivers very well. Like if you try to go to the NVIDIA website, NVIDIA see web results, download drivers, and you put in your product type here. Well, for me, that driver didn't install. So driver booster actually updated the graphics card driver for me. Piece of cake. Okay, enough about VMs. I'm going to shut down the VM. Getting close to the end of this video. It's been a long video. I know you guys have stuck through. You want to see the parts for my server. And I'm going to show you the parts boxes. So looking back on the Docker containers, I have all these apps installed. And I didn't install them all at once. It took a little while. TDAR, I have a node and essentially 2 nodes installed. So I can run 2 graphics cards at once. Encoding, transcoding. If I start the containers, you'll see that there's 2 graphics cards here. And those work very, very, very well at encoding media to HVEC H.265. And I'm running an online store. I'm just setting it up from my Unraid server. So this is for phone unlocking, and it's called https://shop.samsungfrp.pro, and the regular website is https://samsungfrp.pro, right here. And this is my website here and my online store, and I'm adding to my repack games, so I'll be selling repack games and different types of software. If anybody's interested, hit me up. I've had the chat. I integrated the chat into my website, and this website is all hosted on my own server with chat. So if you have any questions about how to set that up, just leave a comment in the comment section, and maybe I'll make a video on how to set up chat. Like, I use Tidio, yeah, titties, but that's how I set up my chat. It's very easy to integrate it into your website. Okay, now let's get into some of the parts that I built my Unraid server with. Here she is right here. I have all my network Ethernet, my 2.5 gig switch here. I have my VPN router, my AX6000 TP-Link router, which is an exceptionally good router for port forwarding, in my opinion. And here's my baby. I'm just going to take the panel off so you can have a closer look. There we go. So you can see there's the RTX 3050, the 1050 Ti, the Corsair PSU that I just put in like 2 days ago. Thermaltake fans. I actually had to drill the holes in here with the DeWalt drill so that I could mount these fans. And I wanted extra fans on my hard drive bays because I don't want my poor babies getting hot. There's my Unraid USB, the Samsung Drive Fit, here's my VM SSD that I use to pass through NVMe. I'm just doing it by USB. And my big CPU cooler with 120mm fans. So there isn't 10 hard drives in here right now. It does hold 10. If I take out the upper fan up here, you can see the black fan. But for cooling, I'm going to leave it in because when I'm gaming, it gets quite hot. So I'm probably only going to end up putting 9 hard drives in here. But I have one mounted in the bay here, in the 5-inch bay, and I have another package here that I was going to use to mount it in where the other fan is, so I still might do that. We'll see if I can fit an extra fan in that's a little bit smaller into where that black fan is. Those are 200mm fans. And in that case, I wouldn't mind putting an extra hard drive up here, because there's two bays here. These are some of the packages that, well, some of them, of the new parts that I put in to the server. Of course, my favorite, the 3050, and the 1050 Ti. Western Digital Red Plus. You know, they're good drives. I highly recommend them, but I recommend the Exos X18 18TB ones more, or the X16 16TB Exos drives. Enterprise. I have 2.5 gigabyte switch, TrendNet. I have, these are the Western Digital Red Pluses. That's for the extra cooling fan that I have in the upper part of the server, 200 millimeter. I put that one in because it didn't come with that from the factory. B550F motherboard, rod STRIX, extra fans, Corsair PSU. These are all the SSDs and stuff that I put in. This is for my VM gaming NVMe. This is an enclosure. And this is the SSD that's inside it. And then these SSDs, these 2400 megabyte a second Western Digital Blues, they're the 550s, that's the 570. These are the ones I have for my seed box. And this is the one that I have for the cache drive, the GameX S11 Pro, 2 terabyte. And this makes a really good cache drive. Data transfers are about 900 megabytes a second. I'm going to show you that. That one I have the Crucial. That's in my gaming laptop. And then I have 64 gigabytes of RAM here. XPG D10. And then for the CPU, I have the 5800X RYZEN 7. So yeah, it was about $7,000 to build this, $7,500. So I'm just going to do a quick demonstration. I'm going to show you the transfer speeds from my seed box NVMe to my cache drive. So this is like an internal data transfer that I usually do because I'm downloading and I'm using Qubit Torrent. And of course I have the self-hosted password manager, Bitwarden. So if you get a chance, you might want to install that. It's really handy to have password manager, and it works with Android on your phone too. And I'm pretty sure there's an app for iOS. So I download my torrents, and then they go here to the seed box, and then I transfer them to media server when they go onto the cache. So I'm in downloads, media server, the 2 file folders here, Qubit Torrent, complete, movies, and then I have a new folder here that I transfer everything in before I do my cleaning of the movie files and converting their names into more appropriate names. Ready to drop it in? That's well over 900 megabytes a second. You know, and it's consistently around 900, 950. It dips below once in a while. But it's a very, very fast transfer speed. I mean, that's like a 10 gigabit transfer speed, isn't it? I don't know. Just about 1,000 megabytes a second. Can't beat that. Wow. That is really fast. I mean, 6 minutes to transfer 260 gigs. Even 800 and 700 is fast. Now, if I hadn't used the Western Digital Blues, because I mean, those hard drives, the NVMEs, they're not the fastest, but they had one of the highest TBW, terabyte writes. So if I had to use different drives, then it probably would have given me a little bit more speed, because I do have Gen 4 capability on my motherboard. Anyways, that's all for this video. Thank you guys for watching, and don't forget to visit my website, https Samsungfrp.pro. Hit me up on the chat 24/7. If you need a Samsung FRP lock removal, only $50 Canadian.